Perfect. All right, well, welcome. Thank you for joining us for this presentation today. I am excited to welcome everybody to National Distance Learning Week. It's a great week of learning from each other and sharing all of this wonderful expertise across our SUNY system. So I'll put a link in the chat to where you can find all of those sessions and the recordings, and hopefully you'll get a chance to check that out. So today I am excited to welcome our two speakers. Jeffrey Birt from Mohawk Valley Community College, and Mark Mattson from SUNY Poly. Jeffrey is an associate professor in the School of STEM Career. Mark is a lecturer at SUNY Poly where he teaches classes in civil engineering technology program, I think. And they'll tell you a little bit more about themselves. But what is really awesome is that they have taken an open educational resource and really kind of customized for this purpose. So we're looking forward to hearing more about that. And we're excited that you could be here today.
Well, thank you for having us. Jeff, do you want to jump in here?
Sure, I shall. And since we've got Deb here, I'm assuming that's Fashion Institute of Technology?
I'm sorry, I didn't quite hear that. Can you repeat the question?
You're from Fashion Institute of Technology?
Yes.
Okay, good. Well, welcome.
Thank you.
And okay, so interesting that you're from Fashion Institute of Technology. My daughter is in a fiber science program over at Cornell, and part of that is kind of more on the fashion design side, but also on the engineering and materials side. So I'm not sure how much you guys do that, but this could certainly be applicable. Definitely some crossover from here to there. And as people climb into if there's more people that show up, we'll go from there. But thank you again, Aaron, and for everything, and especially thank you, Mark, for working with me, putting up with me, and suggesting this particular forum to bring out our work. So this is about Lumen OHM, and we have kind of a story to tell, and we'll just dive into telling it. Okay, so this past year we have been wrestling with the transition from Blackboard to Brightspace, as many other people have run into over the past couple of years. And the first picture there kind of expresses my thoughts on the whole thing. And I went into doing a bunch of stuff in Blackboard because I had other problems with the textbooks and the online resources and so on, and students cheating and so on. And so now we've got, I had all the stuff built up, and we had to go do something different. And what we found was Lumen OHM. We looked at a variety of different things, and Lumen OHM seemed to be the best of the most optimal of things, even not perfect. And so we also go into why that, what happened with that, and as well as some of the potential pitfalls, some of the disadvantages of using it, and then we'll continue on with our overall conclusion. So now, just to note that neither Mark nor myself, nor our respective institutions, we don't receive any compensation for the use of Lumen, and our SUNY actually has a contract with them, so it is available to all SUNY students and for all the faculty members and so on. And this is just our experience with the platform, and we believe our experience is novel.
So yeah, I'll jump in here. And one of the things that we came up against is we have engineering problems, and Jeff and I both teach in different engineering or engineering technology programs. And we were taking things that were kind of going a little bit beyond the capabilities of traditional learning management systems when it comes to online quizzes and just getting instant feedback and those sorts of things. So we both have complex systems. So I took my students to a concrete parking garage this year, and it's interesting. I mean, this was in person, so not online, but when you just look at this one picture, there's a lot of bars going every which way. And over the course of the semester, our students are in my class are going to develop calculations to, figure out how many bars, how long those bars need to be, where they need to be placed, and all those sorts of things. So when you start looking at complex systems, you start needing a little bit more than maybe just a quiz with a multiple choice answer can give. And that's where we're going. So when we teach these courses, we try to help our students by presenting the material, giving them practice, and hopefully allowing them the opportunity to perfect it. So that's kind of like where we're coming from. We have these complex systems that we need to work on, and whether it's engineering or another discipline, that's really going to be the case. So what we found again was with traditional learning management systems, we had a kind of a limited set of quiz type of options, online submission options. Jeff had done a lot of work in Blackboard prior to the switch over that SUNY made in developing quizzes and those sorts of things. But again, they were sort of limited to, rather than looking at a complete system, you're looking at just one part, one calculation, and then you have to go on to a complete new set of criteria. So what we found and what Jeff found is we had a little bit of difficulty with transferring them. And Jeff, I'll let you talk about that.
Okay, so when we went from Blackboard to Brightspace, everything transferred over pretty well. And then I said, but my formula questions are not transferring over well. What can we do about them? And despite the best efforts of the support staff here, they're like, nothing. And I cannot tell you how many hundreds of hours I spent developing these questions and using them for multiple years. And it was great because I could use different numbers for these. And so every student got a different set of numbers. So I told them, hey, work together. That's fine. Work together. And they really learned well together. And they each had their own set of numbers. So they all together would figure out how to do the problem. And then they would each get kind of practice doing it. And then, like, oh, I didn't get this right. Oh, you forgot to do that. And it worked out great. But then Brightspace came along. We were forced out of Blackboard, and that was all down the drain. So so this formula question was troublesome. So I said, okay, well, what do I do? Go back to a standard textbook. Well, if you go to Course Hero, or for that matter, if you go to Course Hero, or for that matter, Chegg, there's so many of these problems that are already simply solved from the textbook. And of course, the textbook is static, and it only has one set of numbers and stuff like that. So, and in fact, if you look at the diagram on the right, the image on the right, that is literally one of my very own personal questions that was put into Chegg from an exam, and a take-home exam. And that student eventually failed because they had been cheating so much, doing this exact kind of thing. And who wants that? We don't want that. And so my frustration level increased. So I said, okay, I want something that can do something what these textbooks do. So here's an example of my material science textbook. It's a Wiley material science textbook, and you can do a molecular weight calculation, and you can do the same thing with physics and some chemistry books and so on. These online homework things, they're right there as part of the textbook, but not all textbooks have this. Only some do, and those are ones for high demand courses when you've got a lot of classes like math or physics or chemistry. Engineering, less so. Engineering technology, even less so. So the great thing about what we would love to see, like about some of these things that we saw in the textbook, is that you can do what I'm showing you here: part 1, part 2, part 3, part 4, part 5. Those are all from my my online material science textbook. And what you do is that you break that problem down into multiple steps. And whereas before with Blackboard could only give you one answer. That was it. So 2 plus 2, that's great. Who needs anything more? But when you have a much more complex problem like Mark was talking about, you want to break it down into parts. So you have to solve for this thing, and then you have to solve for this thing, and then you have to solve for this thing, and they're all integrated and all part of the same problem. I could program some of that stuff in Blackboard, but if the student didn't get every single step right, they failed. They got 0 out of 10. They may have gotten almost there, but they got 0 out of 10, and they got very discouraged, and they did not. Sometimes they just said, "Forget it. I'm not even doing this quiz. It's not worth it." And that's exactly what I don't want. But if you can break it down and you can scaffold it like this, it actually does make the assignment less daunting and helps them, succeed even better. So this is what we were looking for: develop complex problems, scaffold those solutions, provide immediate feedback. Textbooks don't do that. Assure unique combinations so that students can get all of, can have their very own thing, but they can all work together to so that they learn how to do the problem. And then allowing for infinite flexibility was a real bonus. So this is an example right here of one of my Blackboard, I transferred from my Blackboard problem to Lumen. And before in Blackboard, I would only been able to ask one of these questions: reaction at A, reaction at Z, maximum, absolute, one of these things. And but each one of those is required to get to the final most complex step, number 4. Now my students, if they don't get reaction at A, it doesn't let them go any further. They figure out how to get that reaction. Then reaction at Z, they, after a while, they, maybe a couple tries, they get that, and so on. Then they build that up. So, Lumen is that solution that provides that system for on-time submission of these multi-step technical problems. Marcus, are you next on this one?
Yeah. So that's where we started looking. So we started looking and saying, well, what can support that? What can support multiple calculations and not just one final answer? And we looked at a variety of platforms. Lumen was free. They worked within the SUNY system pretty well. But here's a beam problem, multiple steps, right? Here's another problem from a similar class. And what you can see here is there's 14, if you count all these boxes, there's 14 individual calculations to get to a final answer. So, this is where it gets, this is what the types of problems that we're looking at. And each of these problems it can be a challenge for the students. And if they just work for, 20 minutes, half an hour, or whatever they need to work on to get one final answer and get it wrong, that can lead to a little bit of discouragement and frustration. So the nice thing is here, we can have the final answer, absolutely, but also all of these steps are intermediate feedback that they can get right away. So if they get them right, they know right away. If they don't get them right away, there's a system for that in place as well. But this was kind of like what we were looking for. And the nice thing with this is, again, if they don't get them right, maybe they got most of the steps right and made a mistake at the last step. Lumen will give them a little red box, and they have a chance to resubmit. And now, to prevent the brute force, let's just keep resubmitting until we get the right answer. One of the things that Lumen has the ability to set up is the ability to see answers. So, Jeff, I don't know exactly how you have it set up, but I have it set up so that they can submit it twice. And if they get it wrong twice, they have to start the problem over again. And I tell the students that, hey, if you start getting it wrong multiple times and you don't know where you're going, come and see me, get some help. But if you've tried it a couple times and you're still having problems, definitely let me know. So hopefully they get to the point where they can figure out, look at the answers, kind of reverse engineer things a little bit and figure out how to fix them. So that's really what we're hoping for. And really the idea is we want them to achieve learning by identifying and correcting their own misunderstandings, not just copying, not just, getting a solution and not knowing, but also not getting to the point where they just turn something in and never have that feedback, never know if they've done it right or wrong. And not to say that we don't grade the homeworks, because we would grade homeworks, but just there's this idea where once it's graded or once it's submitted from a student, it's done. So students don't necessarily go back unless corrections are required or something like that. But this gives them immediate feedback. And then if, like I was saying, if they get it wrong a couple times, the nice thing is they can repeat this problem using randomized variables. This is also nice because when each student, they'll get their own unique question, same level of the difficulty, same concept, but unique numbers that forces them to write out their own calculations, do their own system. And this isn't unique to engineering, but the thing that is a little unique to engineering is we have these systems where you have to go through multiple steps to get there. In addition to these multi-step problems, one of the things that we liked about Lumen is we still have those same multiple choice, multiple answer questions that we'd have in something like a traditional learning management system. We also have multiple number formats that can be accepted, whether it's a fraction or a decimal. There's also some rounding that can be done. You can also enter expressions straight up. So this is where Lumen is really built to some degree around math. And it started with math. It started with a coding language called MyOpenMath, which Jeff will get to in a minute. But the other thing is you can actually input graphical entries or inequalities or equations. So this gave us a lot of flexibility to meet the needs of really calculation intensive courses with multi-step problems. So to do that, we have to get into coding, unfortunately. So it's not for the faint of heart. It's an open source math program, programming language. It can be applied for other fields, which is how we're kind of taking it. But what you see here is the general library that Lumen has starts with arithmetic, algebra, calc, diffie-hughes, linear algebra, and it all started around a math program. But there's a lot of math when you get into some of the engineering and science courses. So this is where it gets a little interesting. We can take it wherever we want to, but in order to get there, we need to know some basic coding. And you say that's more than basic, Mark. And you might be right. It's you need some basic syntax and basic coding in a couple of languages. Actually, there's PHP, which is what MyOpenMath is based on, and HTML, which is the question text. So Jeff, I'll let you jump back in here and address that a little bit.
Okay. So thanks for getting to this slide right here. I think this slide is a good one to dwell on for a second here. This is a relatively simple problem where we have two forces at right angles, and you're simply the student is supposed to calculate the magnitude of the resultant force. So it's a simple Pythagorean theorem kind of thing, and then the angle, which is a trigonometric thing. So again, it's basically just math there. But to make this question come to the student, this is the this over here is the question statement. Now you got the thing in the wrong spot. Okay, I'll take it. Fine. All right. So this is the question. This is how we create the question statement in HTML, and then behind that is the problem program. So the problem code right here. And so it looks bad, but again, or can look bad. But you break it down. You have to tell it what kind of answers there are. Create the randomly generated values for the A and the J forces. And for this one, I created it so that it can either use pounds or newtons randomly. So what, one student will get on and it'll be pounds, another student gets on, it'll be newtons. And sometimes I make it more complex and Mark shakes his head at me. But you can do that kind of stuff. You can make it into, one set of units or another set of units if that's what you want to do. And you can see right here, this is the Pythagorean theorem, square root of a squared plus, j squared. And then this is where we calculate the angle here with the inverse tangent, and then I change it into degrees. And this gives you the ability to, give the student a little bit of flexibility. There's a plus or minus. If this is 0.01, that means it's 1%. So if the student is within 1% of the answer, it works out. And so this is the coding side of the whole thing. It gives you a ton of flexibility, but just to let you know, I am no computer science guy. I have the worst class I ever had in college was my computer class. Okay, I did so poorly in them that they wouldn't even let me become a civil engineer like Mark is. Okay, so I was stuck with mechanical engineering, and so I have a son who's a computer science guy, and so I leaned on him a little bit. But what I really did is I used, believe it or not, I used AI to help me learn how to code. So that's a whole other ball of wax. But I'm just saying that I'm not some like, oh, computers always came naturally to me kind of thing. Software does, but not coding. So this was a whole new world for me, and it did work out.
So what's out there to help? I mean, what's out there to help is like My Open Math. They give you a general math resource, or I'm sorry, a coding reference file. So, there's a link to it. You can see this, but it's if you Google search it, Jeff will talk about that in a minute. It gives basic syntax. It's not a ton of examples. There is a whole library of examples, so you can go in within the Lumen space and go find previous examples and use those and template them. They are open source generally, so it's easy to find those. It's easy to use other people's examples, but it does take some work if you're going to go there. In addition, there is a community forum, so I posted some things on there, got some responses, not a ton. At one point I was trying to get Lumen integrated with Brightspace, which it does integrate wonderfully with. Honestly, it integrates excellently with Brightspace once you get to that point. I was having some issues. I submitted a ticket to Lumen. I was on the phone with them that same day, so that was really stellar in terms of getting it set up. So exporting from Lumen into Brightspace in our case. And this is where it's kind of cool. This is a Brightspace, the Brightspace screen for my class. This is Lumen comes in as an external learning tool where there's the Brightspace URL, but then actually when the students go into that assignment, it interfaces directly with Lumen. So there's this really, really nice integration that goes on that I've been able to do. It's not seamless. That takes a little bit of it's not just set up there by default, but once it gets going, it's not terrible to make happen. So there are challenges. And Jeff, I know you like to talk about challenges. I'll let you jump in there with some of the challenges that we ran into.
Okay. Well, I get to do the challenges part because I'm a little bit more. I'm not as smart as Mark is, so he's better at all this stuff. But one of the things, if you're a computer programmer, like, oh, hey, I've got a problem with my Python, or it's doing some kind of, how does this command work, right? What's a good example of this? You Google it, okay? Anyone who does Python, C++, even MATLAB, you just Google it, and there's tons of stuff. This is what I got when I Googled. It was all My Open Math stuff, and it usually went straight to that same document that Mark pulled up, and that's all that is a text document. There's I can't find a single video that helps you do the coding. I'm talking about specifically the coding. There's all sorts of stuff that My Open Math has and Lumen has to help you choose a course, set up a course, integrate a course, put an assignment into your thing. So all those kinds of things, it's got plenty of help for that. But creating brand new content, not so much. So and on top of that, you can only do the programming through their site, whereas these other these well-known languages, there are lots of different ways of scripting things between Python, C++, maybe not so much MATLAB, but still. So for example, also if you like, oh, I know how to program, I hope that it can do this. Well, Git is a very common way of doing version control and backups. And unless you want to do a whole bunch of copying and pasting into Git, this will not be, My Open Math does not integrate at all with Git. So you'd have to do it. It's not seamless at all. You'd have to do it all, manually. So moving on, they do not, this is the email I got from someone from Lumen. I said, okay, we want to do this thing with engineering, and I'm going to need some help on how do you program? How do you program it? Do you have any videos? Do you have any tutorials? And this is what I got. OHM is primarily a platform for math courses, not recommended for other disciplines, including engineering. That's what I got when it came to developing my own course and my own coding. So it was certainly a challenge to go from there. But again, like I said, I was able to get help from Mark and the other places, including AI. Chat GPT helped me out, and I was able to, now I'm I would call myself fairly proficient at this over the course of just a few months with a lot of other stuff going on in my life. So again, Lumen and My Open Math are open source. They're built to provide services, and you can see one of the issues might be intellectual property. So your work, you can make it private. So if you'll see, this is what I've got, private. These are all in red. Some are open to a group and private to others, and so those are in green, and then some are open to all. So financial accounting and so on, there's lots of problems there, 1,200 problems in financial accounting that are open to everyone. But if you wanted to keep that intellectual property to yourself, it's here, but it's not easily transported, as you mentioned, and it's if you wanted to integrate it with a publisher, I bet you that's fine. But I don't know if there's any mechanism whatsoever, because it's open source, for you to be compensated for it. So Mark and I have been working for effectively free, and this is these are entire problems. We're talking about an entire textbook's worth of problems that are just that we're not being compensated for. So that's troublesome as well.
But at the end of the day, we're excited. So there's the pros and cons. And again, this isn't like, hey, we're just here to pitch Lumen to you. But on the flip side, Lumen provided the randomization multi-answer problems with immediate feedback that no other system did. Its questions can be written and coded beyond default capabilities of traditional LMS. So this is where Lumen provided us some abilities that some of the default LMSs really didn't do. I mean, and this is where this is where we end with that. It takes something that is a complex set of numbers, problems, and was able for us to meet our needs, where we can customize this to our students. And it's not for the faint of heart. It takes work. It takes some dedication, but honestly, I think just the collaboration we've had has been able to create a small community here. I'd love to see the community grow within SUNY. I'd love to see it grow beyond that, where we could take some of this information and expand it, make more OER resources for students, and really make this where it's impactful for the students. It helps the students. It gives them the ability to go ahead and practice and perfect their work. And honestly, at the end of the day, it's a decent system to make that work. So I don't know, Jeff, do you have anything else to close it with?
I think of one thing that we may have skipped through that I see a note from Deb over here about trying to make math more accessible and less scary to students. But also one thing that I know you do a better job of, Mark, and I'm going to eventually put it into mine, is that if there's a spot where a student's having trouble, you can put right there a link to, say, a video that explains a problem just like this. So it can be, there's all sorts of ways of supporting the students within these types of problems, and that you would never get in a textbook, and that were probably more clunky to do in Blackboard. And so I'm excited actually about the future and being able to really utilize this tool even more effectively than I've been able to do it so far, and being able to see all the different things that are available for us to again, to support the students and make sure that they're learning and encouraging them every step of the way, rather than just saying, okay, do this or else, oh, or else you're done, you know? So, you got that, Mark?
Yeah, no, I see that. That's great. No, I agree with you, Jeff. I'm excited to try to expand it and try to have time to or make time to expand it to some of my other coursework and looking at certain industry exams that are all computer based. I think the students need to get used to taking some of these, doing this work online as well. So I think it provides access to not only online students, but also in-person students to access that type of learning and that type of system that they'll need to be able to perform in when they go to take a computer-based exam for licensure or something like that. So I think this, moving in this direction is a good direction to go in. So I'll be interested to see more feedback. I'm going to be soliciting feedback from my students just with how they like it. Some of my students had used Lumen for math courses previously, so it wasn't uncommon or foreign to them, but not all had, right? And it's not that Lumen's the be all end all answer, but it's an answer, which I think is helpful, and it's nice that SUNY partners with them to make this more accessible for our students.
Yeah, my strength and materials students that are doing these kinds of questions this semester, they had a whole bunch of my Blackboard questions last semester in statics. So this particular cohort has that unique opportunity to be comparative, and they are absolutely 100% prefer the Lumen system over what I was doing with Blackboard, and that was for a simpler class. So they're very appreciative of the scaffolding, of the ability to take it multiple times, and they seem to be doing very well with it. So I'm very pleased with the ground results, as well as what looks like flexibility to us.
So Aaron,
that was going to be my question. Yeah, that was going to be my question about your student response to this tool, this platform, right? And I know a lot of students have used this in math classes throughout SUNY, and so it's really interesting to see how you've kind of grown this to fit your needs. And I love the feedback piece, and I've always loved that about some of the OER tools. I just love that you can interject at those various points within the problem. We're so used to the LMS being able to say, well, here's feedback on the problem itself as a whole, right? And you have to somehow indicate in a narrative, or some people do video feedback or whatever, about where they maybe went wrong. And here you can just do it at that particular point of misunderstanding, right? And help them to learn from that piece. So I love that. And the randomization it allows for all the indicators. So this is really neat. I think it also affords a lot of just kind of reflection about how we teach and how we deliver feedback, how we allow students to learn that it's not just getting to that right answer, right? Like it's that process, and
right
being able to help them figure that out along the way. So that's great.
Very much so. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just love the fact that I can tell my students you can get 100% on every homework assignment. Like honestly, like you can do this over and over again until you get there. And if you do, guess what? Honestly, if you work that hard, you will succeed in the class. I promise. I mean, if they can work that hard to get there, then they'll be able to know the material well enough to succeed in the course. And these courses can be challenging, especially the sophomore level, kind of the statics and mechanics courses that Jeff and I are teaching and that we've adapted this for, are very challenging courses for students in terms of being able to understand the material and absorb it and process it and do it.
Yeah.
And I think, yeah, to your point, it's really helpful to be able to pinpoint, misconceptions and then figure out how to correct them.
Right.
Yeah, because those, just one little thing can just trip up a student, and then it's not addressed. They can quickly get dejected and say, oh, I'm no good at this. It's like, no, dude, it was just one little thing. Like if you just, do you understand, you get them over that bump and they're like, oh, then the light bulb goes on, and they go on and they've done, my students have done so well over the years. Once you can get them that kind of confidence and that assurance that, all you're facing right here is a speed bump. You just got to get over that little bit, and this tool can be part of that for sure.
Yeah. And I really like how you can customize too. I mean, you can create problems that are based off of, real world examples, right? If you take them to a place like you did, Mark, I mean, you can come and use that environment to create a problem, to talk about how you would do this, that, or the other thing. And I'm not going to speak engineering, but right, but you can see how you can do that. And it's just kind of working with the HTML might be a little bit easier than the PHP, but like you said, the resources are out there for people if they want to investigate and try to figure that kind of stuff out. So we had a presentation earlier this week on Markdown software. So we've had a lot of kind of technical things that have been shared. So it's been interesting to see this. And then this morning, two mathematics professors shared their open textbook and a lot of the problems, how they put the problems for the students to solve in there. So I think connecting you all would be would be a really great thing. And some of our engineering folks out at UB too who are doing some of this. So
yeah, absolutely. I think those connections are great. I honestly am a huge fan of open resources. In my classes, I'll do a lot with just like workbook type problems where I'll give them work. We're going over problems like this, right? How to solve like a trust, for example, right? So I'll give them a trust problem in a page where we can fill in kind of blanks and they can go through the process. So I'm a huge fan of that. I'm a huge fan of giving them, even before we did Lumen, giving them problem sets so that they, they're not textbook dependent. So
yeah, sure.
The more that we can do that, I think it's a benefit to the student.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thanks so much. This has been really interesting, and a great kind of example of how you can take something that's there and really customize it for your intents and your students. So I appreciate you sharing this with us today.
Sure thing.
Well, thank you, Erin.
Thank you.
Thank you all.